Okay, we're at the top of the hour. I will hit go live and we'll start streaming. Michelle, if you want to kick it off.
Oh, yeah. If you're live now, I will kick it off. So, welcome to Jump Search Talent Show. We are getting into this is the first of our AI webinar series. And we are so excited to welcome Kathy Slowinski, CEO of Trilogy. And previously, she was the former CPO and VP of product at CircleUp, Numerator, and Neighbors.com. So, Kathy, welcome. I don't know if there's anything you want to add in terms of your background, but yeah, just if anything you want to jump in on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, number one. And I'm looking forward to your series of AI podcasts. Maybe at the end we can have like a big fireside chat with all your AI people, and we can kick around ideas. But background, I was a business undergrad, and then went to grad school to do my MBA. And at that same time, it's early 2000s, so I'm going to date myself real quick. Like .com boom was happening, tech was everywhere. I was like, if I don't really understand this tech stuff, I have a feeling my career is going to have problems to go to where I wanted to go to. And so I threw in a Master of Information Technology at that time with my MBA course, and it was the best decision I ever made. I've basically spent my whole career in tech, and I've kind of straddled the being business enough to lead businesses, but being tech enough where I literally 10 minutes ago was arguing with engineering about upgrading databases because we have a janky SQL query happening. And I know that's a quick Band-Aid, right? So kind of sit in that world where I can talk the tech talk and understand what's going on, but I'm running a business, a multi-million-dollar business. So been lucky enough that I made that decision to take the tech route early in my career, and it's basically led me down the path of a lot of tech product roles, tech roles, and eventually working my way into leadership in product that eventually got me to the CEO seat.
I got to say, Kathy, it was very serendipitous of us to have met you when we did, because we've been going through transition. And just a quick intro on us. We run Jump Search, which is an executive recruiting firm. And for the past more than 10 years, we've been recruiting primarily for venture capital-backed startups and growth companies. And, AI is going to change everything, and we're already seeing it. And so when we met you, and even still, we're sort of pivoting our business from sort of the manual recruiting to developing AI-enabled applications that are solving problems in the recruiting space. And so, we're very excited to have you here, and we're really excited about just our initial conversations that we had a few months ago when you invited us to that little Airbnb over at in Midway to give a little demo of what you guys are doing, and it's so exciting. So just a little bit of context for the audience here about how we met Kathy and kind of just what piqued our interest in terms of what they're doing over at Trilogy. And it's such an AI forward company, and we're hoping in the next hour that we can cover or at least scratch the surface of what you guys are doing over there and kind of the trends that you're seeing and just everything that's going on, because it's moving very fast, and certainly you guys are too. And so anyway, welcome. Looking forward to digging into this with you.
For sure. We actually met at and I was not looking for a new job or anything, but I was at an executive event that you guys host, once or twice a winter at Deer Valley, where we take a bunch of people out, we go skiing, we have a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we met. And then, I don't know, a couple weeks later, I think I let you guys know that I was having an offsite locally. We live in, just so everyone knows, we live within 5 miles of each other.
Yeah.
And I invited you to kind of see some of the results of my offsite, where we just probably threw you guys into the deep end with everything we're doing with AI. But I think that's sort of where you guys were like, hey, like this, this is being done in our backyard, literally. Like we can, there's a lot we can learn. So yeah, very exciting to meet you guys and get you guys involved. And I'm sure this is like the start of many times that we'll cross paths in this space.
Oh yeah, and it was really eye-opening. So I appreciate the invite. And for all of you who don't know where Midway, that's in Utah. It's about 10, 15 minutes south of Park City. So we're all within that vicinity. But I would like to start off just the topic. So there's a couple of questions we have about just how you got started in AI. So Kathy, would love to get a background in just how did you get started in AI and what was the turning point for you in terms of getting it implemented in your company?
For sure. I will say I started in AI less than a year ago, right? It's probably about March last year. It really started to pick up and become like a talking point. I would say I started working for Trilogy again. This is actually my second tour of duty with Trilogy. I ran product for another division years ago. I came back April 1st of last year, so we're coming up on a year. And I would say within 30 to 60 days of coming back, it was becoming like a topic that we would just bring up like weekly. What are we doing? How are we taking advantage of it? Are people even getting their hands on it, playing with it? And so we sort of jumped in. I would say by like end of May, I just looked. I've been paying for premium GPT since summer of last year, so since July, and that didn't come out for a while. So I probably had 2 or 3 months of playing around with OpenAI's tools at the time then. And we would just get in and write prompts and see what it could spit out. And like the more you do it, the more fluent you become in it. We were talking about it this morning. Writing prompts, for instance, isn't like Googling where you're looking for keywords and you're looking for very specific thing like what is the weather in Puerto Vallarta in March, right? Like it'll return exactly that. But in prompt language, you're kind of writing more contextual, like you're speaking to a human. So you have to really explain things like, as a CEO, I want a viewpoint on such and such topic. I want it to be in such and such tone. I can pull levers and say like on a level of visionary capabilities, 0 not being that visionary and 10 being like outer space out there visionary, I want it to sound like a 6, right? You can pull all those things and it'll produce content for you. So it's very contextual in terms of the better content you feed it, the better output it'll have. And so we started doing that. I would say that was probably like May, June, July of last year, where we're just learning to use this stuff. But it really was just jumping in and doing it. And then starting to promote like within like I use this term all the time and it's super not HR like PC, but I say monkey see, monkey do, right? Like if everyone sees me doing this stuff, people will follow, right? And I'm also just like opening the door softly for people. Like they're like, the boss is doing this, we'll do it too. And so that's sort of how it started happening. We created chat groups where we were like sharing all of our ideas and the things that we were learning and just things that we were finding. And that's sort of, it just kind of spiraled until the point where I was like, I think we just need to start dedicating 1 day a week to it. So I started a weekly hackathon. I brought my whole team together every Wednesdays. It's called Wednes.ai. We actually have the domain. It's how my brain thinks. Just buy the domain once you have a crazy idea. And I think by like end of October, we were every single Wednesday dedicating a day to it. And it just sort of started to really snowball and become a bigger and bigger thing to the point where when you guys met my team in February, we were 2 things. We had 2 separate offsites. I had one more sales focused one more product focused one. But we took some of our things that we're doing internally as a company, right? So the product team, right, they're kind of dealing with bugs and features and like what's next. And they're spending a ton of time just like reviewing tickets coming in, ideas. And we're like, how do we automate that? Like, how do we use AI to read the tickets for us and even prioritize them based on priority and severity? So we don't have to do this anymore, right? So that's like, if I can save 10, 15, 20% of the product manager's time just dealing with sort of this back of the house administrative stuff, how can we basically automate that and just let it automatically happen, right? So that's one of the things we built during those offsites or during one of the offsites. And that was taking somewhere between 20 and 40% of the product manager's time. And now they've freed up that time to think more creatively. So where they're spending their time is coming up with like AI features for our products. So that's sort of like the snowball effect from like us just playing around with prompts to now we literally are building these end-to-end AI automations that are saving us tons of time so we can do the more valuable things like come up with new product features so our customers get more value out of the products they buy from us.
And just to play this back, Kathy. So you're saying back in May, June, Trilogy wasn't. They were just getting their feet wet too, and it kind of started with you leading that charge to some degree. And I mean, I would imagine there's a lot of companies out there right now that are just, maybe folks are using ChatGPT or generative AI on a personal level, making images or correcting their grammar in an email or something like that. But what advice would you give to folks, to companies that are looking to kind of maybe accelerate sort of that maturity that you guys saw from May to where you are today? Like, what could they start to do? And is it a grassroots thing, or is it something that has to be coming top down from the senior leadership? How do you think about that?
I think it's both. I think it's a combination of like things are probably being done behind the scenes that you don't even know is happening, amongst your individual contributors. But I do think it has to also come from the top down. And so we are actually literally talking about this, like, and this is, we probably didn't do the best job of this, and we're taking a step back and talking a little bit more about how do we create more of a vision and communicate that to our people, and also create like a desire for them to want to do it. Some people right away were just like, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested in it, right? Where other people like really leaned into it. I, being sort of like a nerd at heart and technical at heart, jumped in. I was like, this is, within months, I was like, this is the internet all over again. This is that feeling I had when I was in, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade, and I used to like get home as fast as possible because we had dial-up AOL, and I wanted to play around with it for 2 or 3 hours before everyone got home, and I like had to get off the telephone because you used to like hold up the whole telephone system at home, yep. Right? And no one could call you, and no one could, like, I remember my brother being pissed at me. He's like, I want to make phone calls. Get off the damn internet, right? Like, or AOL. No one even called it the internet then. Right? That's the feeling I had like over the summer. And so to me, my desire was like, this is where this is going. But we're creating this desire for folks to realize, and we've talked about it with our teams. We're like, a lot of you, if you take the step forward and really adapt this stuff and integrate it into your day-to-day lives, chances are you're going to get poached from our company within the next year or two, because companies are going to be seeking people like you. So there's a benefit for you guys to doing this, right? Like, you actually become more like valuable on the street in terms of your currency of being like an expert in product and an expert in the ability to use AI to enhance the product management process, for instance, right? And then the other big thing is, we talked about it, like there's a framework we were talking about this morning, and it was modeled the way. That's my monkey see, monkey do. I think I did a better job of the model the way than I did of communicate the vision. And so now I'm even taking a step back and sort of rethinking, like, what is the vision for us and where do we want to get to? And then, you have to change the way people work and just start just saying like, hey, the future is this way. We've got to change some of our processes and the way we operate. And then eventually, I think all this stuff will stick and become part of the day-to-day. But it's a process. It's not like you just, wave your magic wand and all of a sudden everyone's doing AI. I think there's the learning curve and letting people get through the learning curve. And that was part of that hackathon, right? Is just getting everyone together so they can learn from each other, but also see the value in it instead of being afraid of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And what would you say that the Wednesdays were sort of instrumental in just sort of fostering sort of visibility in what folks were doing and sort of cross-pollinating across different teams?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think it did two things. It helped like solidify a culture around like, this stuff is safe. It's not scary. I think people are super intimidated by it because they're like, AI, it's cyborgs, and like, it's going to take everyone's jobs away, and people think of it the negative way, but when they see how it starts to help them day to day, because they're building GPTs that like take something that used to take them hours. I'll give you an example: product marketing, right? Like we kind of sucked at product marketing before AI because we didn't have a dedicated human for it. And I was like, why can't the product managers do it? Like in the old school days, that's how product managers did it. And so we started building GPTs to help us with the product marketing side of it. And now what would take us like a week to put together and copyright and edit and just get feedback. I mean, I can get this content out in 40 seconds, maybe a minute, right? And then, yeah, I'm going to go like, it's 90% of the way there. I'll go through and like touch it up a little bit, but that stuff used to take us hours, and not everyone's like a good writer. I will self-admit, it's the best thing that's come from AI for me so far is how much more content I can put out as a human and how much better quality it is. And once I've like tuned all my prompts to really communicate in the way and style I like to communicate in, I just feed my bullet point ideas into it, and out comes like this smooth, sexy version of what I really want to tell people that I'm like, there's no way I would get there in seconds. Like this stuff takes me days to do sometimes. So that's like one of my best value adds that I've gotten out of it, is like, it has just changed the way I communicate. Like I not that I hated it, but it was like one of those things I avoided. I was like, oh, I hate writing those long emails and trying to communicate things. Now I'm like, here's my bullet point version that's in my head, make it sound great. And it does. It's so good. But people seeing those like, oh my God, I don't have to like sit here and write an email for an hour, right? Like to a customer, I can take in some of what the customer said plus my ideas, and like, I don't know, let's say 3-4 minutes later, because you got to iterate it a few times, you get a polished email and you're like, holy cow, I used to spend 45 minutes responding to things like this. We actually use an app now called Shortwave, where it's learned our response style, and it'll pre-write the email for you based on your previous historical response style. And again, massive time saver. I don't have to spend like 3-4 hours a day in email anymore. I can probably get through those same amount of emails in under an hour. Right? I still have to like QC everything before it's completely out, but it's getting so good that my QC level is like going down because it's.
Is it learning from your quality control?
Yeah, it 100% it is learning.
And you said it's called Shortwave?
Shortwave.
Shortwave, okay. And does it integrate with your Gmail or email?
Yeah, it does. It basically just grabs you. It will work with Outlook or Gmail, G Suite, and it just grabs all your information. If you get the premium version, of course, another $20 fee for something different, but you get the premium version and it sucks in like all your historical email, and it's got this archive. The search functionality in it is so good as well. It's way better than G Suite. I'm a big fan, and I still jump into G Suite once in a while out of habit, but I would say 80% of the time I'm in Shortwave and just getting things out. It still needs things like Salesforce connectors. Like if you're one of those companies that wants all the history in Salesforce or HubSpot, it doesn't have that functionality yet, but I would imagine it's coming soon.
Okay. And just kind of, I wanted to make a quick comment on, you were talking about how AI is a required skill, or it's going to become a required skill, because we were doing an AI job seeker webinar, and we pulled some data from Indeed, and they said that the number of AI jobs posted on Indeed has skyrocketed to 600%. So when you think about it, it's just a huge spike. And I mean, I don't think right now a lot of people are on that curve yet. I think we're early adopters. It's just going to increase even more so. We have seen a flood of people in the third world country that have been using AI, because I get a lot of spammy emails and they're written in a nicer tone and there's less grammatical errors, but you can still see, hey, sir, ma'am, I would like to present you a product. And so I can tell they're using ChatGPT, and it's interesting to see where the trends are going. And people need to start learning how to use AI, because that's the people who learn how to use AI are going to replace the people who don't.
100%. And I think the jobs that were heavily like manual, I'll give you an example, support, right? I think the latest stat is like 60% of our level 1 tickets at our company right now. This is another thing, like our head of support, Philippe, started back in like April, and he just like chunked away at it. And we're at 64% of our tickets are being responded to, our level 1 tickets, by AI. And our goal is that we will have no level 1 humans working on level 1 tickets by the end of the year. Ideally, a chunk of level 2 tickets will even be, by the end of the year, answered by AI. Because the AI is basically getting better and better as it sees the scenarios and we feed it more content. It just incrementally, it's like one little bit at a time. But there's like an old saying, like many shavings make a pile. Like our pile in support is getting better and better. And to know that, and here's the thing, our support is 24/7, right? We've my portfolio alone has 8,000 customers across like 18 products or something like that. If we can scale this is huge for us. Like we can answer our customers' questions so much faster versus them waiting sometimes days to get answers by the time like someone went through like a knowledge base and found it, right? Or it gets, shoved up to level 2 if they can't respond to it within a few hours or whatever. I think they get 4 hours before it goes up to level 2. Instead, this is like instantaneous answers, real time. Customers are just working with the bot. If the bot can't answer it, it goes up to level 2 at some stage, right? So,
Kathy, can you talk a little bit about just sort of the journey you guys had in terms of developing that internally? You guys did develop that internally, right? You didn't rely on an external competency or consulting firm to do this.
No, everything's internal. We're big like on being hands-on and learning and doing it ourselves. We're very like, got a problem, try to figure it out. We rarely use external consulting companies. 100% done internally. I think they tried a few different tools, but they ended up with a product called Voice Flow, and they're using that to basically build the chatbots. And you heard the word voice, so eventually it'll be able to talk to people in 2 directions. I actually just saw one of my teams building a sample because we're going to move our customer success to be avatar based eventually. Like I think we're hoping 90 days where it's avatar based. Initially it's going to be bot based, but it'll move to avatars where I can talk to the avatar, ask it a question, and then it gives me a proper response. And so I think our support will get that way as well here shortly.
Right around the corner. It's coming, right?
I mean, I'm a product manager at heart, so I hate committing to dates. But I would say within 90 days, we will have POCs where we're testing it with customers.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, going from chat to voice to video avatars. Yeah, I mean, it's moving pretty quickly. And I mean, right now it feels like there's just a smattering of tools out there that are just emerging. And I think one of the challenges that I'm seeing is just which tool do I start to use? And it feels like there'll be some convergence at some point or some consolidation of some of these tools.
Sure.
But yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing with multimodal. You and I talked about that briefly maybe a week or 2 ago. And what does that even mean, right? I think right now sort of the de facto is like interacting with AI via text. But what is multimodal?
So just a little bit about what we talked about. Like I think it's very one-dimensional. Like we've all interacted with like the chat bots and things like that. That's been going on for quite some time. But now we're starting to see where you can talk to it. It can talk back to you. That's voice. Then we'll get a visual avatar that kind of has humanistic like look and feel. There's a product called HeyGen, and you can go into
you're freezing there.
Uh-oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
I'm going to turn off my camera, see if that helps. Does that help? Can you hear me?
Oh, you're on mute, Eric.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we can hear
you. Well, I turned off my camera. Hopefully that'll help with any of the lag. There's a product called HeyGen that we're experimenting with, and we've done some POCs with. We actually had a big product launch at Mobile World Congress, not in my portfolio, but in another colleague's portfolio, where she basically built a avatar that you can literally have a conversation with in like real time, and you can even upload like a hand-drawn sketch of something you want, and the AI converts it into a real life UI. And some of that is like I would imagine duct tape and rubber bands right now, but there will be a future, I think, again, within the next year or so, where this is a reality and you could do it end to end without what I call duct tape and rubber bands. I foresee that happening in less than 9 months, that it's out there and you'll start seeing it. And I think we will be a company that is using it as soon as it's available. And I'm pushing my team right now, even if we have to do some kind of weird things behind the scenes to build these, eventually the technology will catch up to what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, you demoed that for us, and what I thought was so cool about that was that, interacting with the avatar in sort of natural language and expressing what you wanted, and it interpreting what you wanted and sort of translating that into, behind the scenes and actually implementing it like in real time, and just closing that request, response, and even implementation loop, like, was in real time. And it was amazing to see that, because in the traditional way of doing that is like, developing some requirements, communicating that to maybe a product manager or an engineer, them actually implementing it, maybe testing it, and then getting a demo. And that could take, at best, it could take like days, right? At worst, it could take weeks or months, right? But to see this implemented in real time, was amazing.
And Kathy, maybe for the listeners, can you give a little background in terms of like what was the use case? You mentioned a little bit about it, but what was the HeyGen avatar doing? Because I was kind of blown away by it. I mean, I didn't think that you could program it to process all that information and talk to it synchronously. So if you can kind of give a little background on that.
High level use case. The other portfolio that launched this product, they're in the telco space. So, we all have a telephone in our hands, and they work with mobile network providers, right? And there's these things called billing systems, and they're pretty antiquated. They're out on the cloud, out in like old school data centers still. So they've built like a cloud billing system. And now a lot of times you'd have to like go back and forth for weeks, if not months, to build your billing system out. And now with a bunch of technical people, of course. But now this BSS magic, as we call it, billing system magic, it can do it real time on the fly, build a billing system out, and within minutes have something that a network can push out to its customers, where this used to take weeks, if not months, to build out in the traditional way of doing it. And so AI is basically enabling a bunch of technical work that your average Joe, like the use case, they were building a mobile network for Mr. Beast, right? Like, and it had Mr. Beast's branding and like 3 different tiers, right? And they were named after some of like the stuff that he does. But like, that's how quickly they did it. And she demoed it like on stage, and in 5 minutes there was a Mr. Beast branded network, and it can go live. Like, it's not just fake, like it can go live and just be pushed out, and Mr. Beast can have his own network in 5-10 minutes of talking to our avatar. It's crazy. It sounds
that is crazy.
It sounds super futuristic, but it's the reality of where we're at. Like, it is helping people put products out into the world so much faster, and new offerings, for instance, right?
Yeah. When we were talking during that little hackathon demo that you guys did for us, Kathy, one of the things that stuck in my mind was this idea of obviously increasing capacity of your team, but also the skill set sort of evolving from being more of a doer to being more of a curator.
Yeah.
And I'd love to kind of just maybe have you kind of expand on that a little bit, because it kind of touches on what are the what are the skills or experience or capabilities that become more valuable on the team as a function of it adopting AI? And it has implications in terms of like hiring. Like, what do you look for in terms of skills and bringing new people on your team? And it has implications in terms of what the future of teams look like now. And so, would love for you to kind of maybe expand on kind of what you've seen over the past year or so.
Yeah, for sure. I think for my team, and including myself, we're all going to be curators of this stuff. We have to take our expertise and put it into the systems. We have to educate the systems on what we want them to do and train them on what we want them to do. And QC the work, but I think that's where this is going. Where if you have the skill set to become a curator and not just be sort of a specialist. So people are going to hate me for saying this. I think,
Kathy, you're freezing there.
I'm going to turn off the camera again.
There you go. We can hear you.
And we're gonna call Verizon or Comcast after this and complain. I think I was saying, people will probably hate me for saying this, or I don't know, take it for what it's worth. A year from now, maybe sooner, AI will be so powerful that I think a well-trained AI, we call them centaurs, right? It can take a workflow from end to end and produce it in seconds versus something. And I'm going to use product management because this is where I'm spending a lot of my time right now with my team. I can come up with a visionary product roadmap that includes putting AI into my existing products and all the marketing materials. I literally built this the other night with one of my product managers. I can have all the content pushed out and this is what would take a product manager months, if not quarters, to research. I can have that in seconds now. But it's taken me, like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 hours of time to build this. This is like 20 years of my knowledge, right? I'm the curator, putting in my knowledge into this AI centaur that I've built. It's basically like this spreadsheet where it daisy chains a bunch of prompts together, so it just keeps making the prompts better and the output better. But long story short, it can create like a product playbook for a product in seconds now. It's not perfect, but it's getting better. I think AI will be able to do what a seasoned product manager takes months to do. It'll be able to do it in seconds, minutes, let's call it a day of work. Of course, you still have to build all the stuff. You've got to work with engineering to get it out the door. But all that front loading of like that research work could get done in minutes, if not days, versus months and quarters. Which, I mean, I remember like going out and just doing all this competitive research, right? And it could take you 2-3 weeks to get it all done. I have taught the AI and curated the AI in a way to go out and do the competitive research in seconds. And that is where I'm like, having that skill set and knowing how to use AI to make yourself more scalable as a human is going to be that cutting edge that people will have or not have.
Yeah. And that's amazing. I mean, so what are the implications for that? Like for teams, is it just, existing teams, as they start to evolve to this, just become much more productive? Or do you see companies sort of doing the same amount with maybe just a smaller team? Maybe.
I think it'll go both ways. I'm hoping we just become insanely more productive. Gone are going to be the days where I have to like sit there in front of my customers and say, yeah, that's going to take us 4 quarters to build because we don't have the capacity. Because we haven't even done the competitive research or the market research or anything yet. I can be like, I could probably have that built for you in 30 to 60 days, right? I think like we're going to find bottlenecks where we're calling this the jagged frontier, where like there's just things that humans still have to do and you can't get the scale out of them. But have you guys seen the launch of this new product? It came out like 3 days ago now, called Devon.
No.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, where it's like software development done by AI. I mean, if this thing is a third true, I could work with Devin plus my product managers, and we could have prototypes. I'm not saying this thing is going to write production level code next week, but if I
Yet.
can get prototypes out and have the customers using them, like if I come up with the idea today and have a prototype in 30 days that is like really, really good, or even a week, that's unheard of. Like prototypes used to take us a quarter to build. What if I can build them in a month? What if I can build them in 2 weeks? What if I can build them in a week? I'm now creating way more value for our customers if I can get stuff to them lightning fast versus being like, let's talk about it today, and then in 6 months you might be able to use it. By then the customers have forgotten about it, right? By then you've got like 700 new ideas, and so you've probably dropped that one idea. What if you can go from idea to prototype in days? This is where we're going. And so I think it's just going to make products better.
Yeah. Kathy, I'm curious, for somebody that's just, starting to flirt with the idea of immersing themselves in AI, obviously you've been doing this now for some time. What advice would you give them to kind of come up to speed quickly? To get to the point where they can be much more of a curator, and so that they have a good understanding of the landscape of the tools, and kind of, I guess, what guidance would you provide to that person to kind of come up to speed quickly?
I don't know who coined the term, like it takes 10,000 hours to become like an expert, but like get in there and start using it. Start like watching YouTube videos, get on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. Find some of these folks that are experts in the space and start following them. They post stuff there's so much content on Twitter. You could spend all day there just replicating stuff with some of the stuff that these influencers are publishing, and then thinking about, okay, how do I apply this to my day to day? Just get out there. You got to do it. There's like no better way to get good at it than, there's not a book that you're going to read and magically you're going to become an expert. Like this is a hands-on thing. You just got to go out and do.
And are there any misconceptions? I know we were touching on this briefly before we started streaming here about just maybe there's a misconception about AI being a real technical thing that's for the engineering types. Any misconceptions that you care to comment on there? Because
I don't think it's super technical. Like I think in under a year I'll be able to work with AI and build prototypes without having to write a line of code myself. Right? I don't. You just have to learn to converse with it, and it is, every one of us can talk, and it is like you're literally having a conversation with it. You just have to understand how to converse with it in a way that it understands and refines things and responds back to you in a way that you want it to. Right? It's conversation. It's conversational. It is not. You're not having to learn like a new language, like Python or Java or whatever. Like it's something that we all can talk, right? And you just talk to it. I mean, you're literally having a conversation with it and telling it what you want it to do. I mean, at its simplest form. Trust me, it gets a little bit more complicated from there, but nothing is super technical. You do not need to be writing code. There's so many tools coming out that is going to make this. I'm a little worried about one area that I probably, if I was an 18-year-old, I would be questioning if I wanted a future in computer science, the way that computer science has been the hottest thing for the last 20 years. There was that conference in Dubai a couple of weeks ago where NVIDIA's CEO was up on stage talking about how for the last 20, 30 years, like software engineering was like the place to be, and that's how you unlock the technical future. And he basically is like, no, every single one of us will be able to unlock the technical future because we will be able to interact with the AI in simple language.
Yeah.
Kathy, do you think that all engineers are going to get replaced, or do you think that it's just certain engineers will get replaced? Like, what do you think the trends are going to be?
Yeah, I definitely don't have a crystal ball. I think a portion of engineering, and I can't say what, will be replaced, but I think it'll be back to like curators and engineers building the AI. I think some of our basic engineering, I think we'll be in a future within a year or two where like some of our basic engineering, like bug fix kind of stuff, gone. AI will do it for you, or a lot of it for you. I think maybe building the new things, coming up with the new engineering languages, like all those open source communities that are out there where people are coming up with the new stuff. I'm not sure if AI is there yet to build that kind of stuff out, but there will be a subset of engineering for sure that disappears.
And I think
AI is going to enable us to. AI is just going to enable us, like your average person, to be able to go out there and build things by themselves. Like there's been this like blocker, right? Like where you couldn't build things unless you understood how to. Like you couldn't build a website unless you knew PHP back in the day. And then things like WordPress came along and changed that. Like, and now anyone can build a website. But now to build like software, there's still like, there's like a blocker to doing that. Like you need a certain level of skill. I don't know if in a year or two everyone's gonna need that skill to build software. I think people could build software without engineering support. We're not there today, but we will be there, I think, within a year.
And we're seeing that across, I think, the board, meaning in marketing, finance, I think in operations, there are going to be certain roles that we foresee that are going to get replaced by AI. And a lot of it's going to probably be content. So market content, just mostly it's the junior to mid-level, I think is going to get replaced. And then really it's the senior level of people who are a little bit more strategic that will stay. And they'll get better at their job with AI.
Yeah. But I also think it'll create new roles where people that learn to use AI, like those junior people that are worried that it's going to take their jobs away, like learn to use AI so that you can, again, curate the AI to do more advanced things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't predict where it's going to be in 5 years, but I think in the next year, there will be transformational change. The other problem, too, is that it's only going to be in a small microcosm of companies and places, right? Because not everyone's adopting it. Right? Everyone's like there was some research right before the holidays. 50% of companies are talking about it in the S&P 500, but only 4.4% of companies are actually implementing anything with AI. Right? So we're far away from like wide sweeping changes across the business landscape. But it'll start with companies like Trilogy that will lead the way. Right? We're going to implement a lot of these things, and we'll be hopefully 10 years ahead of everybody else catching up to what we're doing.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be like a long tail of just, how do you implement this, from enterprise to like, small mom and pop businesses down to just increasing your own personal productivity. And it feels like there's going to be a lot of opportunities to, sort of shepherd that across that long tail.
Yeah. Think about it like the way when the internet came out, right? Like how long did it take companies to even implement like internet and digital technologies? Yeah. There's companies that are still doing digital transformations, right? Right. This will have a 20-year tail at least.
Yeah.
But I think it's the companies that implement it early, they'll learn and just keep pushing the boundaries with it. Right. And then in 20 years, there'll be AI transformation people out there still transforming stuff. So figure out how to ride that wave. Like if you're young and worried about your job, figure out how to jump on this bandwagon and ride this wave, because this is a 20-year wave, guaranteed.
Yeah. I mean, the barriers to entry, I mean, you were commenting on that earlier. There's so much content out there to learn this stuff. And it feels like it's sort of just, figure out a rabbit hole to go down. And it feels like you could quickly become an expert. If you want to become an expert in image generation and Mid-Journey, like you could do that within a matter of months and be really productive with it, and maybe the barrier to entry is just figuring out what niche you want to go down and just going deep,
If I can do it being a CEO with a day job and like get pretty proficient in it, pretty much I think anyone can do it, right? Like, it's not like I'm spending 40 hours a week on it. It's maybe 10 to 15, right? And in my free time, like, instead of going on Instagram at night, hop on Twitter and look at what people are doing, and then be like, and bookmark those things, and the next day, like, try it, right? So it's not, I would not say I put in insane levels of effort on this. Like, it's not like I'm, studying for another master's degree. Like, this is just whenever I have free time, I drop a couple hours into learning, and I always find something that I'm like, oh, another rabbit hole to go down and learn something that's I can implement tomorrow. That's the cool thing about it. You can implement anything pretty quickly with it.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's great advice. I think, especially for CEOs or leaders. Are there any other advice for executives or CEOs or just people who are managing a team to kind of get their feet wet, or things that they haven't thought about as they approach moving towards AI?
Great question. I think there's a hesitance for a lot of people. My partner works at a company that they're not even allowed to navigate to ChatGPT. It's blocked.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So if you work at a company, like, I would change those policies as fast as possible, where you're blocking your people from doing it. I think all you're doing is handicapping everyone. Even in schools, like, the schools are blocking it, and I'm like, man, you are just the kids need to learn to use it, right? It's going to change their lives completely, just the way the internet changed our lives, right? I mean, can you imagine still going to the library and looking in the filing system? What was it called? The Dewey Decimal System, to go find a book,
the card catalog.
Jesus. Or, I joke around. I'm like, someone said this in my team the other day, and I had to, like, jump in on the chat, and I was like, they're like, oh, isn't this scary that AI can, like, beat human decision making? And I'm like, isn't it scary that a calculator can calculate math faster than your brain can? Like, it's the same concept, guys. Like, it's just the 2024 version of it. Like, it's computing power has just allowed us to do a lot more computation faster. And it's not just math anymore. It's computation across language and reasoning and things like that. So, so advice for people: if you're blocking it, stop. Like, you got to come to grips with that this is the reality, and you need to figure out how to use it to your advantage. I think the other thing is, it does just allocate 15, 20, 30 minutes a day and just do it. Try things. Learn about it. You have to do it. It's the hours in the seat thing. And, I'll like, I go through stages where I'm like, man, this is, I'm not learning anything new. And then all of a sudden, like, 3 days later, I uncover something and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think about it this way. So you're constantly finding, like, new ways to implement it. And a lot of this is I'm, scrolling through Twitter feeds at night and like seeing what these influencers are doing. I mean, some of these people spend all day doing this. The other weird thing too on Twitter is, like, one influencer will show something and then they all copy each other. So you're bound to, like, see it within your influencer sphere. It's not just like, you only see it once, and if you don't get lucky finding it on Twitter, you won't see it. Like, they all copy each other. So, like, join a bunch of these newsletters that the influencers put out. It's funny.
You're breaking up,
this camera thing. All right, I'm back off camera. Join the, like, newsletters and get this stuff in your inbox. Okay. But like, once you start getting all these newsletters, you'll see a common thread. They all kind of talk about the same thing. So even that's another way. Like, you don't have to sit on Twitter, but you can just join the stuff, and it's in your inbox, and all you got to do is read it, and maybe, like, 2 of the articles a day, go down the rabbit hole of, like, learning what this person's talking about, and you're like, oh, okay, I can apply that to my budget cycle. I can apply that to my customer success meetings. You'll see the patterns pretty quickly once you start immersing yourself in it. But you got back to it, like, you just got to start doing it.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, these are tools. It's just like you said, it's a calculator. It's like the internet. So if you never jump on the internet, it's kind of, I mean, at this point, it'd be ridiculous if you weren't on the internet and you didn't know how to use it. So at some point, it's going to get to a point where it's integrated in our lives, and you have to know how to use it because everybody else is using it.
Yeah. I mean, it's who uses a typewriter anymore?
Yeah,
Right?
I used to use a typewriter. Funny enough, back in middle school.
Yeah. Right. We've all, it just all like evolves, right? And you have to jump on it. There will be a point in time where if you don't have AI skill, like if you don't know how to use the internet today and you go to work in the tech space, like I don't know how you get a job. I think there will be a future where if you don't have AI skill and you go to work, want to work in tech, you will not get a job.
Yeah.
Kathy, we have a question in the chat here about any recommendations of any AI influencers or folks that you might be following on YouTube that you'd recommend.
Not on YouTube, but on Twitter. Give me 1 second. Ethan Mollick's probably he's like the one that everyone follows. I can probably, for your show notes, give you like my dirty dozen influencers that I like. He's sort of the one that everyone knows about. There's a few other. Moritz Krem is another one, but I'll leave you guys show note stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great. And obviously, you might be in sort of the 1 percentile of folks that are just completely brave. Is there anything that worries you about the pace of emerging AI technology, if at all?
I'm not worried about it. I think the biggest challenge is where to spend my time on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what worries me the most, is like, am I missing something? I know a lot of people are worried about, like, is it going to, take over the world and start wars? I mean, I'm sure people thought the same thing with the internet. I'm sure people were worried about when airplanes started flying in the sky. There's always going to be like the detractors.
Mm-hmm.
I think given just my background in tech and optimism for this stuff, generally speaking, I'm not super concerned about it imploding the world or anything like that today. Honestly, my biggest worry is, what am I missing? Right? Like, where's the opportunities that I'm not thinking of? And I think a lot of that is, just like with the internet, right? How much of it changed just in our lifetime, and how quickly it changed.
Yeah.
This is moving, in my opinion, 100 times faster.
Yeah. I think that's part of what scares me is the pace at which things are moving, because with the emergence of any new technology, it solves problems, but it also creates new, maybe unexpected problems. For example, with like the social media thing with Facebook, it's done wonderful things to allow people to connect, to discover new communities, to, sell those old pair of skis that you just never use anymore. Right, you could do that so much more effectively, faster, but it's also created, sort of new sources of mental illness or cyberbullying. I think there's some folks that are attributing like a lot of the growth of teen depression or suicide to some of these, social media phenomenon. And so, like, how do we keep up with the pace of solving some of these sort of unexpected problems that some of these new technologies create? Granted, they're solving some they're solving some portion of these problems for us, but they're also creating new issues. But can we keep up the pace? That's one thing that kind of worries me. But I'm optimistic too. I think that a lot of these technologies, if we're wielding it in the right way, would be able to use to our advantage, as a society. But long term, it remains to be seen.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you can kind of get slippery slope on all the things you're worried about, but it's like, we don't even know the problems it's going to cause yet. And hopefully, just like the other situations, we're putting things into place to hopefully stop or reduce those things. On the flip side, it's also even helping, like, mental health problems, for instance. It's creating accessibility, like the internet, for instance, created a lot of accessibility for folks with mental health problems. I happen to know someone in the tech network here locally that literally built a tech-enabled mental health platform, so that anyone anywhere in the world can basically get support, and you don't have to have the shame of mental health issues, and you can kind of keep it in your own world, right? So there's pros and cons, right? In one case, it's causing problems, but in some cases, it's solving problems. So there's I think with any technology, right, you gain and lose.
By the way, is that Scott in Midway?
No, it's oh gosh, I was just texting with her the other day. Can't think of her name right now. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Trying Amelia something. It'll come to me. But yeah, it's cool what you can do, right? And there's definitely pros and cons.
Yeah, and to your point about the therapist, you were mentioning Scott. So one of our friends here in Midway, he's the CEO of a health company, and they're using AI, and the AI was, I don't know if it can't scan the room in terms of emotions, but it basically, I think the dad was getting diagnosed with cancer, and then the bot turned to the mom and said, "Hey, how are you feeling about this?" And that mom was just bawling because it really made a huge difference, because no one had ever asked how does she feel about the diagnosis. And so I think having ChatGPT or some sort of avatar as a therapist, and just having the access to it, it's going to change the world. And I think it'll allow for people not to feel ashamed to have to go to a therapist. They can actually talk to ChatGPT and talk about, hey, why is my wife acting this way? Or why is my coworker having issues, having a cow today? And ChatGPT will give you options, and it'll tell you why. So I know we have 3 minutes. I don't know if we have any other questions from the audience, but I wanted to give a little bit of time. And Kathy, you mentioned you have questions for us as well. So I thought we would make it kind of a Q&A for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
A rapid Q&A.
In the chat, I just posted my top 12. Actually, it's 13 now, because I found another one the other night that I really liked. People I follow on Twitter/X. It's like the Sears Tower. I don't think I'll ever call X. It's always going to be known as Twitter for me. Questions I have for you. Since you guys have, I suppose, like, met me and sort of jumped into the world of AI, what have you started using it for? What's been like your biggest aha? You're like, damn, why was I doing that manually before? Or like, this is so much better than the way I did it.
Yeah. I guess I can go first. So
yeah, go ahead.
Just, ChatGPT and Claude and some of these other LLMs have been sort of my second brain, for creativity, for coming up with new ideas, for validating ideas that I have and sort of expanding on them. So it's my sort of go-to, instant valid sounding board. So that's on the personal productivity level. But in terms of applications to our domain, which is talent acquisition, it's really prompted us to imagine new ways that this technology could be used to democratize what we do, which is high touch executive search, to the masses, right? To mid-level, entry-level careers, to even careers that are, or jobs that are where there's just no margin to have this level of concierge-like search services. So how can we make the candidate experience better, the interviewer experience better, just across the board? And so it's really prompted us to think really out of the box in terms of how this technology could be used to make the world of recruiting better for everyone, and just to again, just democratize that from high-level search down to sort of the longer tail, if you will.
And we're building that bot right now too. So it's something that we're actually building out. And this, your hackathon really got us to think about it. I've started diving in a little bit more. It is scary at first, so I would say I'm a non-technical person, and I was a little bit taken back by it. But little by little, I think the big thing was really learning how to prompt ChatGPT. It wasn't just asking like a one-liner and just give me a list of ideas. You have to give a background. It's like talking to your VA or your EA, your assistant.
Yep.
And say, hey, here's a background. I'm a recruiter with 15 plus years of experience, and I typically work with executive level talent. Can you write me some articles that tailor to them and make sure that it has a really awesome hook? So that's how I've been using it, is more from a professional, personal level in terms of creating content. And I haven't really gotten into the nitty gritty, semi-technical side of things, but we are going to be prototyping that.
Yeah. It's also prompted us, Kathy, to examine like what assets do we have in the way of data, and how can we maybe tap that data in a way that was previously inaccessible before. Most recruiters have the equivalent of a CRM, which we call an ATS, an applicant tracking system, which houses obviously all the resumes, but also all the metadata on that, right? We do a ton of interviews, and historically we've always used typewritten notes to augment sort of what we know about a candidate. And that's all buried in a database, right? And a relational database. And how do you query that? Oh, you do, you put in some search terms and try to, query the database in that way. Now we can ask, with this technology, you can ask your very qualitative questions about the data in our database. So for example, like, give me a description of the kinds of folks that I've interviewed last month, right? And it could respond with sort of qualitative a response about what it knows, or the kinds of folks that you've interviewed over the past month, or you know what I mean. So it gives you new ways to interact with your data. So inherently, it's making your data more valuable by giving you new ways to interact with it. And so it's prompted us to ask those kinds of questions about what we have in the way of assets or resources that could be accessed or used in new ways.
So
do you find it? Do you find it's actually even helping you with like recency bias, right? Because like someone you just talked to, so they're fresh in your mind versus things you've forgotten because it was 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. And instead you can just get unbiased answers from what's in your database.
Yeah. I mean, with respect to talent acquisition and recruiting, recency bias is certainly a problem, right? Because the person that you're fresh with, that you have a good energy with, that you just got off the phone with, versus somebody that you spoke with, like you said, a few months ago, you're probably going to there's a bias towards that person you just spoke with, right? In terms of promoting, building a case for that person. And also just the access to that person that you spoke with months ago, or maybe even years ago. Maybe years is not as relevant, but it can be. That's the point, right? And so being able to mine and access those folks in a quick and compelling, in a quick way, it makes it more compelling. So those are all the things that are emerging as a function of this technology. And so it's prompting us to look at that. And so it's exciting. It's exciting.
I was going to wrap it up because we are past the hour here. I appreciate your time, Kathy, and especially I know you're recovering from a cold. I appreciate you sharing all the profiles that you follow on Twitter. So I will put that in the chat, as well as prompting framework. And, maybe the last question is just how can people find you or connect with you if they have any follow-up questions?
The easiest place is LinkedIn. It's K Slowinski, so as the profile. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask any questions. I'm always open. If you're in Utah or Chicago, where I spend probably the most of my time, happy to meet with people for coffee or a beverage.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Talk
a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks
for having me.
We'll have to do this again sometime, and look out, because Michelle and I are going to probably put together a panel, and we'd love to consider you, if your schedule permits.
Yeah, I'm in for sure. I think I'm probably in this evangelist advocacy role with AI because I have just dedicated enough time into it over the last, let's call it 9 months, to really see the value in it. And I think every day, every week, the value just keeps going up for me. So hopefully I can continue to bring some value to your audience.
Yeah. And I think it's so important right now. The faster people can become more AI literate, the better off we are as individuals, but also as a society, in sort of guiding how this technology evolves to the extent we can. So the more AI literate people are in our society, the better off we're going to be, I believe. So
For sure.
Thanks for doing your part, Kathy. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
All right.
Yeah.
See you
Thanks,
guys
Kathy.
soon.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye-bye.